and Facebook. Okay, so I am live, and hopefully we'll get people in. You know, I'm gonna, I think turn on the light above. Maybe not. I don't know. I think. All right, we'll find. So what's going on? The Sydney Sweeney thing. Now, normally I would do a video and then let it go, but I'm not going to because it's really stupid. All right. First of all, when you get women who've got septum piercings, more tattoos than Nikki Sixx, who weigh 300 pounds, screaming about an attractive blonde girl doing a jeans ad, and you suddenly kind of understand that it comes from envy. I mean, that's that's what I derive from this. It doesn't come from any worries about, hey Mike, how you doing? It doesn't come from any real place of worry about you know racism or anything. And you got to be stupid if you think that this is a racist ad. I mean, the only reason why some of these people are saying that is because she's a blonde white girl. And apparently you're not supposed to be a blonde white girl, even if you are, right? What should she do? Dye her hair purple and gain 100 pounds and get a butch haircut? I mean, what? What is she supposed to do? Leave it alone. You know, if you're so unattractive and you made yourself that way intentionally, you have nothing to talk about because you are the way you are because you want to be that way. And look, as someone who back in the day was fit shamed by fat pig women, I have to say that I know what it is when I say it. It doesn't come from any, you know, um, real worry. It's because they're women and they're jealous and they're assholes, right? I mean, if you saw the video I made about this, you will understand where I'm coming from, right? You see some of these girls. One of them, you know, is so stupid I can't. The other one, there's another one who, she's screaming and yelling and she's got a rainbow flag behind her. Why do you fucking care? You shouldn't care what a straight woman wants or does, right? So what's your problem? All right. And of course, the other one had eyebrows like a woolly caterpillar just decided to sit here, and they're way up here. They're not normal. She's the weirdest looking thing I've ever seen in my life. And she's screaming and ranting and raving, and it's like, look, bitch, every one of you people could do something to better yourselves. But instead, you've chosen to be ugly, whether it's the toxic colored hair, which in nature inspires birds and other things to stay away from you because you're poisonous. Hi Kim. You know, or you've got this thing in your nose and you look stupid. And it's usually like even like inverted. It's never like where it's supposed to be. Like, I don't even, what does that even mean? I you know and I'm not old, right? I'm not. It's to me, people who follow trends are people who are going to be sad in the end. That's all I'm going to say on that one. All right, that's it. Anyway, so yeah, we've got this issue. No, it's not eugenics. Do these people even know what that means? And Sydney Sweeney is a straight woman. She likes men, and she likes looking beautiful. Um, and there's no reason for hot girls to not be in ads just because you're not being represented, right? We've had way too many times where the ugly, fat, demented Vadolf Bemlers were in ads, and the ads didn't work. People were like, gross, right? I mean, then of course you've got, the racist part. I don't know. My family on my mom's side is half Norwegian. If you ever watch the show Vikings, if you know anything about Scandinavians, there's a very strict code about how Viking women wore their hair. And it was in braids, and it was like this, and then it was down, and it was very, very, they were very, very tight braids. They were very, there's a certain thing to them. Apparently, we now have angry BLM types screaming that that is cultural appropriation. But God damn it, if you see a black woman with blonde hair, I'm not supposed to say anything. That's not cultural appropriation. It's only Viking braids, Scandinavian stuff. That's called, what the fuck, right? I mean, it's like, really? Are you kidding me? So they're screaming about Sydney Sweeney. And it's like, look, not all of you are going to look like Whitney Houston, Tyra Banks, Naomi Campbell, Iman, Donna Summer, so there you go, right? I mean, get over yourselves, right? And of course, the body positivity people are screaming too. But a lot of those people, like I said in the video previously last week, are leaving that philosophy because it's unhealthy. When you know girls who are large, who have diabetes already, hey Dave, and they're only in their 20s because their body cannot deal with their insulin resistant because they're so fat. What part of it is unhealthy do you not understand? And do not try to tell me that your doctor told you you're fine, because I know they didn't, right? I mean, I'd like to lose 20 pounds just because I'd like to. And, I talk about it all the time. I am not overweight. I'm not morbidly obese, right? But I'm middle-aged and I would like to, get back to where I used to be. I know that's not going to happen. If I got down to 120, I would just be glad to be at 120. I wouldn't be the 120 that I was, in 2012, right? Okay, it's 124 then. I mean, and that would be great. But, well, ambivalent attitudes. What ambivalent? Can you expand on that? Because I don't understand. But anyway, so let's talk about George Lucas. So George did his first Comic-Con. And he was up there on the panel with Doug Chang, who honestly, I think if he took over Star Wars, I would be happy with that. But, he's the senior vice president and he does set design for Lucasfilm. And he's been doing it since George ran the show, right? Guillermo del Toro, George talked about art pulling out an emotion from you. And to me, here's where I'm getting this from. Oh yeah, they ignore it because they think it's patriarchal to want to be beautiful. It's not like a natural instinct for a woman, right? Right. Because that's not natural to want to be. Okay. I just go, now, well, I was going back to the artwork. So, George talked about it has to bring out an emotional feeling for you. And now this panel that he did was for the Lucas Museum of Narrative Art, right? Narrative film, narrative art. And he's going to have 40,000 people, or pieces of art people, pieces of artwork in that museum. Guillermo del Toro is donating his collection. To me, when George was talking about that, be it a painting, and I'll give you a an example. When I was in Vienna, when I lived in Europe, went to the Belvedere, which is a former palace for the Habsburg emperors. And that's where they have this priceless Austrian art collection from the Austrian secessionist movement, right? Gustav Klimt was the leader of that. And he was very interested in using gold everywhere. And his paintings were not, they weren't traditional. I mean, if you look at a Gustav Klimt, and there's one called The Kiss. There are other ones, and the figures are beautiful, and these paintings are beautiful. They give you this thing. They evoke an emotion. On the other hand, I saw Egon Schiele's paintings. They were horrifying, and the emotion I got from that was repulsion, absolute repulsive. Look up Egon Schiele. Scheiele. Just look it up. You'll be like, what? And that's not propaganda. It's just you look at it and go, what's wrong with this artist, right? You don't get the same feeling from that as you do from a Vincent van Gogh or a Manet or a Monet or a Caravaggio or you name it. And ugly art brings out literally the bad feeling in a person. Beautiful artwork brings out the good vibes, the good feelings. They inspire you. And we're talking about movies. There are people that like to go to ugly movies. I would say horror movies that are slasher movies like the Jason stuff and Friday the 13th and Freddy Krueger and all the rest of that crap. Those are slasher movies. Those are ugly. They're not, there's nothing beautiful about them. When you get to something like Dracula, or Gothic horror, or even Frankenstein, the story subject, if you break it down to the subtext, at least the novel Dracula, you start to realize that it was a commentary on probably the syphilis epidemic that was going on. But though it's scary and what goes on is ugly, the language used is beautiful. The motif of the good guys fighting for the soul of the girl against the monster is beautiful. That's what it is. Okay. When you watch a Dracula movie, a good one like Nosferatu, the original, it's here on that is here on YouTube actually, the original Nosferatu, all the way to Dracula 1931 with Bela Lugosi, the next one with Christopher Lee, and of course Bram Stoker's Dracula, where Francis Ford Coppola had Ugly the bat, and he turns into a bat. That's gross. The clothing, the colors, everything, vibrant, right? And it's still good guys fighting a bad guy. Now, I'm not sure if I like the redemption story of him because I don't think Bram Stoker would approve. But here you are, and then you've got the Nosferatu, was it 1979, with Klaus Kinski in it, and that was a weird one. That was very, 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 very strange. Um, and I happen to know from someone who actually had to work with Klaus Kinski that he was batshit crazy. Look it up. Look at it. Guy was nuts. But there was an inherent beauty about Gothic horror, even Frankenstein, that is a step up from like Saw and The Hostel and all the rest of this. Just this creepy. You kind of look at the person who wrote it and goes, "What's wrong with you?" You know, there's horror and then there's, "Are you okay?" You know. Um, so then, all right, and George was talking about that. Guillermo del Toro came out and said this: mythology unites. If you go, and I'm going to add my opinion on that. If you go into ancient belief systems, be it Sumerian, be it the Akkadians, ancient Canaanites, they had the story of the Great Flood, Noah, right? And that was adapted by the Hebrews as part of their their belief system. There are cultures all over the world that have a Great Flood myth. Obviously, something happened. There's a unification. There's a unification in the hero's journey because everybody has one. Even the Chinese have that. Even though they try to kill individual achievement and they don't like the idea of the hero as a singular person because it goes against what the communists in China think. And you know, I it's part of oppressing, I think, the Chinese people, not allowing them to have their individual identities, you know. But anyway, but their mythology unites that the hero's journey unites people all over the place, especially in Europe, where the Greco-Roman mythology was, and you got Nordic mythology and Celtic mythology. The hero, Jesus Christ, that is a hero's journey, right? And the thing about it is Guillermo del Toro said that. And then he said, very few people run propaganda. And propaganda divides. Now, let's go into Star Wars, okay? Let's go into Star Wars. The prequels divided because people weren't happy with it. But as you look back, they're starting, to the point where Disney is using Hayden Christensen everywhere. He was like everywhere, right? And the reason why is because it is his story, right? Now, what is the difference between the prequels, the OG, and the sequels? The prequels and the OG tell a story, tell a mythology. A mythology we're all familiar with. The sequel trilogy is propaganda, okay? Propaganda. From the way they portrayed Han and Leia in their marriage, Rey Nobody, right? Putting Finn out there and then taking away the story he was supposed to have because you can't sell tickets in China if the hero's a black guy because they don't like black people. All this stuff. Then it goes from a very weak, lazy storytelling with a tinge of bullshit to flat out woke garbage in The Last Jedi. The TFA divided the fan base, right? TLJ absolutely destroyed the fan base, right? Solo made it worse. And The rise of Palpatard did nothing to fix anything because the division was already there. It's all propaganda, right? And very few people, and I'm going to say the people at Lucasfilm, Kennedy, because shit rolls downhill, J.J. Abrams, Ryan Johnson, and out there in Lucasfilm publishing garbage, Pablo Hidalgo, and Matt Martin, and Hidalgo's wife, and all these people using their position to put bullshit in there to undermine what we thought it was about. Because, according to Pablo Hidalgo, they want to indoctrinate the kids. And it wasn't our Star Wars. Okay? No, but nobody liked it. Nobody liked it. Right? They're not making sequel trilogy figures. You don't see anything but Kyle Ron on Coke cans. And it's like, people, you not only divided the fan base, divided people, you burnt down your goodwill by this garbage, right? And when Guillermo del Toro said that mythology unites and propaganda divides, I was like, oh my God, that's what happened. And I kind of looked at that panel. You've got one guy, Doug Chang, who is, hey, Janai, how are you doing? I haven't seen you in a long time. Doug Chang is up there on the days. He is vice president at Lucasfilm now, and he's a set designer. He learned under George. So what they were saying is story pushes design. You have to have a story before, you have to have the what are you going to tell the people? What kind of story are you going to tell your audience? That informs the designer of what it's going to look like. Kathleen Kennedy's sequel era. No storytelling, propaganda, divisive propaganda, piss poor designs, and by the end it was cut and paste crap from the EU that didn't work. And of course, the Wayfarer, that's the dagger of Mortis, right? I mean, holy crap, it's like, because they didn't have a story. And Ryan Johnson never intended to tell a story. He intended to bully the fans, kick the legs out from under the prequels and the OG because, I don't know, George Lucas ruined his childhood with hiring, Jake Lloyd or some shit. Or, I don't know, Jar Jar Banks. I mean, this is, he comes from that, but he's also woke. So we got the propaganda of Vice Admiral Gender Studies, Leia's weird behavior. We got Rose Tico's Maoist speech and Canto Bight, the subplot to nowhere. It's like, you guys, right? I mean, it was so obvious. And them talking about this stuff at Comic-Con told me that perhaps the Disney executives now know where they went wrong. All right. Again, it's been really, ever since, Matt Bellany went off on Kennedy and her idiot PR manager and that ass-kissing reporter who interviewed her for Deadline when Bellany announced that Kennedy was leaving. He went after them. I mean, he unafraid. In fact, because that reporter called Bellany a liar, a senior editor at Deadline called Matt Bellany and apologized. Because it wasn't lying, everybody knows it's true. The only person who can't be convinced it's not true is that it isn't true is Kennedy herself. When she went to Star Wars Celebration, I'm not going anywhere. Well, we don't care. You're just not going to be at Lucasfilm, okay? And then, of course, you got Jon Favreau saying he's not going anywhere either. So it's like, what do I have to do? Spray bitch be gone everywhere? I mean, so it's like, I look at this and going, it's quiet, but you've got George up there, first time at Comic Con, getting a huge, wild standing ovation, talking about things, why things, his museum, the artwork they're putting in there, and why things matter, and why stories matter, and then design comes, why mythology unites, and why propaganda written by very few people divides. And I'm like, in the silence from Kennedy since Star Wars Celebration has been deafening. They had some sort of a 50th anniversary party or something for ILM a few weeks ago. And Frank Marshall took a very blurry picture of the stage, and Kennedy was up there with Lin-Wen Brennan. And the rumor, and this is from, I think, the Hollywood Reporter, is Lin-Wen Brennan is going to ILM to run it. So they're removing her from the storytelling. So whatever the guys think up, ILM is going to have to come up with the character, the designs and everything, and the effects for it. They're not going to have. She's not going to have anything to do with running. I didn't even see Hannibal. She's not going to have anything to do with running Lucasfilm, right? So we just have to sit and wait. Now it's 2 days before the first. The first is the first month of the fourth quarter for Disney. Next, on the 7th, Thursday, I think, of August, is going to be the, Abu Nas shows up every once in a while on X. In fact, I saw him there, and he did a show, and I didn't watch it, with Cameron and Lorena Creel, yesterday night. So, I mean, I didn't watch it. I had stuff to do. But the Disney's third quarter financial thing is going to happen on the 7th. And, I don't expect any big announcements, but the fact of the matter is, and I've said this before and I've been wrong, but maybe I'll be right this time, that usually this time of year, executives in Kennedy's, of her place in the world, of her status, tend to leave, right? And of course, Matt Bellany hasn't said a word about Kennedy leaving since his fiery retort. I mean, he basically called Mike Fleming of Deadline one of the reporters that likes to crawl up the anus of a producer and live there. Ick. And he really said that. I mean, I was like, dude, so yeah. I mean, it's quiet. There's nothing, they're filming Ahsoka season 2. Hayden Christensen was supposed to go to a Comic Con in England, and he couldn't because they were doing night shoots. So I don't know what that means. But he is definitely going to be in Ahsoka. And look, Dave, when I saw Bellany's retort, I was like, Kennedy's lucky he doesn't sue her. Or Deadline is lucky. Because they called him a liar and he wasn't lying. And look, Kennedy knows that. I don't know if she's delusional. I don't know if she just can't stand the idea of not being a success. I know she thinks she's the first female head of a studio anywhere. And that is, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. For her, of all people, to say that. back in the day, like back in 2018 when Raylo was going full steam ahead, you can convince the Molly Damons and the Amanda Wards and the Renfamouses and Gail Simones and all these pigs, these, Anita Sarkeesians or whatever her last name is, that Kennedy isn't the first female to have a studio. I mean, you could show them the Desilu leadership board with, Lucille Ball as the head of Desilu, right? I can't remember the French lady from over 100 years ago. She was a secretary, then she ended up basically filming movies for a French filmmaking company. She got married to one of the executives. They came to the United States and opened up a studio in the first Hollywood, which is Fort Lee, New Jersey. Her husband went to California and opened up the studio there. They got divorced, but she ended up taking over the studio. And after he died, she ran the studio. And there have been others. I mean, my God, Joan Crawford was the CEO of Pepsi. Anybody remember that? And of course we had Dawn Steele, Sherry Lansing, who was married to the director of The Exorcist, William Friedkin. She ran Paramount. She came in after the guy that replaced Bob Evans. Bob Evans, was the head of Paramount when The Godfather 1 and Godfather 2 came out. And then he decided he wanted to get into production, right? He did Chinatown and a couple of very huge movies back in the day. He got himself into a lot of trouble with cocaine, and there was like a murder thing that he had to testify at, and he was kind of a bad boy. Some of the shit he did made Ozzy Osbourne look like a Boy Scout. Alice Guy Blanche, yep. And that was her over 100 years ago. So when Kathleen Kennedy says, I'm the first head of a female head of a studio, no, you're not. No, you're not. And, there's that. And I think she's delusional. And I think, honestly, if you go back, what I want you to do, if Demange and I is still here, what I want you guys to do is this. Google or ask Grok to find his reply to that interview. Because I almost died when I saw what he said back. Unafraid, completely like, fuck you. What are you going to do to me? Because it's true. Again, like I said, the only person who can't accept she's leaving is Kennedy. And her husband, who I trolled on Instagram, and you guys saw that too. He replied to me. I'm like, everyone's laughing. And, but this is where we're at. It's quiet. It's the dog days of summer, right? We have, purple, blue-haired land whales and tatted up, pierced up, angry feminazis screaming at Sydney Sweeney for being beautiful. Beautiful, straight, white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, doesn't hate Trump. And they all hate her for it. What they really hate her for is she's beautiful and it's effortless. And they would actually have to lose tons of weight, get rid of the septum ring, right? And, these women have lost all instinct or suppressed the instinct to try to look nice. And here I am in a t-shirt and blue jeans shorts, but I got a horse to take care of soon. So, that's why. I'm going to go and, get chewed up by the flies out there too. Spray her down fly spray. And of course, I sprayed my own legs with that shit because when they bite you, it's like steak knives. It hurts. They draw blood. I mean, they're nasty little fuckers. And I don't spend a lot of time. She's old. I mean, Kay's old now. She's still skinny. She looks better better than she did. But I don't think we're ever going to get her to the roly-poly, tip-top condition that she used to be in because she's 25. She could have Cushing's disease, but she's not retaining her hair. And that's one of the things that happens with horses is that when they get Cushing's is they can't, they grow hair and they can't shed it. And I don't see her keeping that around. So pray, because eventually that will kill her. It's just something old horses get. But she's lost her top line, and she lost that, Well, no, thinning. No, it's Cushing's disease makes it grow, and then they can't shed it at all. I mean, there was an old mare at her old stable that they had to shave her down once every 2 months because she had it. And she looked like a woolly mammoth in the wintertime. I mean, and I felt bad for her. I'm like, if my horse was suffering like that, it would really be tempting to say, it's I think we need to say goodbye to her because this is killing me to watch this. But no, she shed out fine. She's just old and skinny, so you do what you can for them and that's it. The hair thinned, not with horses, it gets thick. I mean, it absolutely it boggles your mind how bad it gets on them. I mean, to me, I was like, whatever, But back to what's going on at Lucasfilm, it's been quiet. Sparrow is relaxing from what I heard because the decisions have been made. There was a list of people they thought might take over Lucasfilm, and one of there was, let's see, Jon Favreau, which I'd be like, yeah. Dave Filoni, okay. Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, that's ideal. That is ideal. Then later it came out, Jon Favreau and Carrie Beck. Now, I don't want Carrie Beck anywhere near it. I want her to be taking orders from the guys because she is woke. She's one of Kennedy's little fembots. But what I think happened is I think she threw Kennedy under the bus to save her own job. I think that's actually what she did. Kojak is behind me if you see him. See him? There he is. Say hi, Kojak. He's been very accurate. Yeah. He's been like, there are specific things that happened that he was dead on accurate. And a lot of this stuff, because for some reason Disney keeps everything down low with Lucasfilm, it's just like, why? Here's the deal. If Kathleen Kennedy was working for me and I was Bob Iger, and she was fucking up everything constantly, I'd leak everything. Why? Because humiliation makes people leave quicker, right? I'd leak everything. But he won't. And in fact, one of the things, I think it was Sparrow, said, if you guys get into the bus, go back to September or August of last year. Article came out in the New York Times absolutely trashing Iger and Bob Chapek. And the rumor going around Lucasfilm is that one of the people who leaked information to the New York Times is Kathy, right? Now, The stuff that we know and I believe that has happened over the last 2 years because it's obvious. I don't need a news story specifically about something that occurred if I see results, okay? And when I used to work for Congressman Richard K. Army, 26th District, Texas. He had been the House Majority Leader. So, and I'm also a former presidential personnel appointee. So you gotta learn to read between the lines. The thing that came out of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny came out, and at the Cannes Film Festival, Kennedy's in there watching the movie and finds out they canceled Willow and shut down the hotel. That was her idea. Her idea, right? Then you go further, the week before Dial of Destiny premieres nationwide or worldwide, Steven Spielberg, in front of her and her husband, by the omitting that they're even standing there while he was talking about who created Indiana Jones. George Lucas, he mentions, Harrison Ford, and the glue that held everything together, John Williams. He never mentioned once mentioned Kennedy or Marshall. Okay, that tells you that everything what we were talking about was being talked about. And it also goes into what Bellany said in that refutation of her. Ozzy Osbourne on his worst days made more sense than Kathleen Kennedy does, right? And at the end of this, we'll talk a little bit about Ozzy's funeral and his funeral procession through Birmingham. Anyway, so that happens. Now, Thursday, that day, the day of the previews, I went to go watch the movie. I'm in the parking lot at the AMC. I'm scrolling through Twitter or X, get a phone call from Cameron. They kicked Kennedy off the server at Lucasfilm. Why? Apparently, this is the rumor, they were looking, this is what we were told, they were collecting emails. And then I was like, so I walked in the theater going, then Monday, apparently, and this got back to Lucasfilm, she sat down with a face-to-face with Bob Iger, Alan Bergman, Dana Walden, and a bunch of lawyers. And basically, Iger wanted her to explain why Indiana Jones failed. And instead of explaining why Indiana Jones failed, she turned on Iger and started giving him shit about Shang-Chi, the Eternals, etc. Apparently, Iger lost his shit. Now, he's normally a pretty even-headed guy, even level-headed guy. Lost his shit, right? She goes off on vacation. She comes back and finds out she's not allowed on campus at Lucasfilm unless she has security with her. And they have to follow her everywhere she went. Do I believe that? Yeah. Do I think that is still happening? I have no reason not to believe it's still happening. Okay, there's no one said anything. And the fact that another part of that, in that September, I think, or maybe August, the corner office at Lucasfilm in San Francisco was cleaned out of all of her stuff. Okay, so has she been there physically? I don't know. Is she still listed as the head of Lucasfilm? Yes. And, I just asked Iger, why can't you just say she's gone? Yeah, because, again, Capitol Hill, if someone fucks up that much, they're gone. Everybody knows they're gone. Let me give you an example. There was an article back in 2001 about these interns and staff assistants that worked on Capitol Hill and their lives. It was kind of like Sex in the City, and it was in Vanity Fair, and everybody was horrified. I was so intrigued, I went and bought the magazine. And Tom DeLay's press secretary was mentioned salaciously in it, and the girl that was talking about him was a Democrat. Big no-no. He got fired. A lot of those girls got fired because they made their offices look stupid. They were incompetent. I'm sorry. I don't care if you're Kathleen Kennedy. But 2018, if your last movie, which was Solo, lost $250 million, your last movie didn't make $1 billion. And your contract is not automatically assumed to be renewed. Get the fuck out. That's what they should have done. But the rumor was, the excuse was, and I call it an excuse because it was an excuse. The reason why nobody wanted the job is Lucasfilm is a terrible place to work, and no one wants to come in during the middle of a trilogy. Really? You know how you make it not a bad place to work? Buy out people's contracts and kick them to the curb. Right? Again, you're talking office chemistry, right? If you are working with people who are disruptive, Pablo, you get rid of them, right? If you find out that people that work for you are causing monumental problems for one of your star actresses, Gina Carano, you find out who's doing that and you fire them. Because they're not making you money, she is. She's the show pony. If her support staff is fucking with her because she's, anti-vaccine and is asking questions about the lockdown, that's not her fault, that's their fault. And if you don't want her to say anything, you go to Pedro Pascal, who, is looking at half the country calling us Nazis, and say, shut the fuck up, you little homo. And I think he's gay, but, that's just me. I mean, the dude has a fetish for women's fingernails. And every time he says, he's your daddy, it makes me want to puke. There's nothing masculine about the guy, but I'm off on a tangent. Anyway, so is this true? I don't know if it's true or not, but the fact of the matter is, something happened. Now, she shows up at Star Wars Celebration, tooting her own horn, but she was only there for an hour, and then she left. And then it was John and Dave, the John and Dave show. And when she walked out, Japanese people were giving her a golf clap. They're not going to boo. They're not American crowds. They're not British crowds. They're not German crowds. Germans would just sit there with a silent treatment, like this. Because they're stoic. Americans, and probably pelting her with rocks and garbage. But, this is the thing that you got to look at is what has been going on. Disney wants to protect itself and not see one of their big franchises turn into a hub of rumor mongering. But that's their fault. Not addressing the subject of her incompetence is, is their fault. Iger should have said in 2023, we're not renewing Kathy's contract. And she will be getting some executive producer credit, and then make sure everybody hears it. But she will have no creative input, right? Because I want to ask you guys a question. Do you think Steven Spielberg and George Lucas had any creative input in Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny? I hear no. I hear a lot of no's. See, a creative producer is a producer, like Steven Spielberg is usually. An executive producer can be, but usually they're not. And by how good a movie is or how bad it is, usually is indication who had the last word in what was going to be in it. And if George and Steven were like, we don't want anything to do with this shit, and I think they were, the writing is on the wall. The first 20 minutes felt like an Indiana Jones movie. And I'm one of those people that looks at deep fake and I liked it. Especially since I know, though he didn't get any credit for it, that was actually Anthony Ingruber in a lot of the action scenes with Harrison Ford deep faked over him. It was Harrison Ford in it too, right? But the rest of the movie was asinine. It's like they went, found Larry Kasdan and asked him, how bad can we make this? And then let him do it. And the introduction of Helena Shaw, played by that pain in the ass, pain in the ass, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, just, it ruined it. It ruined it. Now, they saved it in the end, I think, at least the end was at least what I would call a save, not making a movie better, but they didn't kill Indy off, right? They didn't kill him off. Why? Because the test audience, which is people who work at Disney, the executives went, and then they had to go and Harrison Ford said they had to reshoot the ending. Fine. All right, that was fine. And that was exactly what had to happen. But it still didn't save the movie, right? It didn't. But as far as Kennedy, I want you guys to go look up Matt Belloni, Belloni. He's one of the founding editors of Puck.com, which I think is probably the best film news website out there. He does suffer from Trump derangement syndrome, but it's not as bad as some. And I've given him shit on it. That shit just gets old. It's like, please stop it. Just please. Talk about what you know, which is the film industry. Okay. Please, for me. So, there's that. And go read it yourself. Go read what he said yourselves. The rumor was what, even before Belloni went out and said he heard from 3 different sources at Lucasfilm that Kennedy was out this year, that Kennedy had been told that she was not getting her contract renewed, and we never heard anything about that. So that's something that's real, right? Because there's nothing in the news saying she did. It's what I wish she would do is just bow out. Take the money and the rest of her paychecks and go all right, see ya, Gravity, bye-bye. Take the paychecks and go and move some of those films you've got sitting in script form on your husband's desk. Move them along. They're supposed to be developing Michael Franzese book about his father, Sonny Franzese. It's called Blood Father. And, you sit there looking at him going, You've got a good story here. Do something with it. This money, just, waiting to be earned. Because I think it would be a good movie. Anyway, I gotta go. Sydney Sweeney is not a racist. The fat pigs are screaming at her. Of any sort of ethnicity, are racist fat pigs who are envious of a pretty girl. George Lucas and Guillermo del Toro and Doug Chiang undermined the sequel trilogy without even knowing it museum, at the museum panel that they did at Comic-Con. And, it's been quiet for some reason. Sparrow's relaxing, apparently. That's what I've been told. I don't know. I'm just, they can do whatever they want. And I'm going to use they with that, with them, because I don't want to give anybody an idea about who they might be. Okay? All right, anyway. Go run. See you guys around the galaxy.